The creek runs black with shadow. Beneath the thick canopy of oak and pine in Robin Hood Hills, West Memphis, Arkansas, the water moves slow and silent, carrying secrets it refuses to surrender. It is here on May 6, 1993, that a search party will make a discovery that shatters a community, sparks a nationwide moral panic, and sends 3 teenagers to prison for a crime they may have never committed. The victims are 8 years old. Just children. Christopher Mark Byers, James Michael Moore, and Steve Edward Branch. Second graders at Weaver Elementary School. Cub Scout wolves who rode their bicycles into the woods on the afternoon of May 5th, promising to be home before dark. They never return. By 7 o'clock, worry hardens into panic. John Mark Byers, Christopher's adoptive father, calls the police. Neighbors organize search parties. Flashlights cut through the Arkansas dusk, voices calling out names that receive no answer. The initial police response is limited, almost casual. Friends and neighbors conduct their own searches, including a cursory visit to the drainage canal where the boys will eventually be found. No one sees anything unusual. The morning of May 6th brings more organized efforts. Crittenden County search and rescue personnel lead a shoulder-to-shoulder search through Robin Hood Hills, a human chain moving through the underbrush like a living fence. They find nothing. Then, at 1:45 p.m., juvenile parole officer Steve Jones spots something that doesn't belong. A black shoe floating in the muddy creek that feeds into a major drainage canal. The subsequent search reveals a horror that will haunt West Memphis for decades to come. The bodies are stripped naked, hog-tied with their own shoelaces, their right ankles bound to their right wrists behind their backs, their left arms and legs secured in the same manner. They are positioned in the creek as if discarded by some malevolent tide. Their clothing is found twisted around sticks that have been thrust into the muddy ditch bed, most of it turned inside out. 2 pairs of underwear are never recovered. But it is Christopher Byers who shows the most disturbing injuries. Lacerations cover his body. His scrotum and penis have been mutilated. The initial autopsies, conducted by forensic pathologist Frank J. Peretti, determined that Byers died of multiple injuries, while Moore and Branch succumbed to multiple injuries with drowning. The police immediately suspect the worst. Rumors of sexual assault begin to circulate. The crime scene suggests something ritualistic, something performed with deliberate intent. The community wants answers. The community wants someone to blame. Enter Damien Echols. 18 years old. Black hair, black clothes, an interest in occult literature and heavy metal music. Echols and his 16-year-old friend Jason Baldwin represent everything that frightens the conservative Bible Belt community of West Memphis. They are outsiders in a town that doesn't tolerate difference. Police officers James Sudbury and Steve Jones feel the crime has cult overtones. They focus on Echols almost immediately. During a polygraph examination on May 7th, Echols denies involvement. The examiner claims his chart indicates deception. On May 9th, during a formal interview with Detective Bryn Ridge, Echols mentions that one of the victims had wounds to the genitals. Law enforcement views this knowledge as incriminating, despite the fact that details had already circulated through the community. No physical evidence connects Echols or Baldwin to the crime. But in a case starved for leads, perception becomes reality. On June 3rd, police bring in 17-year-old Jessie Misskelley Jr. for questioning. Misskelley has an IQ of 72, categorizing him as having borderline intellectual functioning. He is questioned alone for roughly 12 hours. His parents are not present. Only 2 segments, totaling 46 minutes, are recorded. By the end of the interrogation, Misskelley has confessed. He implicates Echols and Baldwin in a story that will change multiple times over the coming months. He claims they abducted the boys, sexually assaulted them, and performed a satanic ritual. But his confession is riddled with inconsistencies. He gets the time of the murders wrong. He describes injuries that don't match the autopsy findings. He initially claims the murders happened in the morning, when the victims were actually still in school. Misskelley quickly recants, citing intimidation, coercion, fatigue, and veiled threats from police. He says he was scared of the police, but the confession is already public. The Memphis Commercial Appeal puts portions of it on the front page before any trials begin. The narrative is set. 3 Satan-worshipping teenagers have sacrificed 3 innocent children in the woods of West Memphis. The arrests come swiftly. Echols, Baldwin, and Misskelley are taken into custody. The prosecution assembles its case, built on Misskelley's disputed confession, dubious fiber evidence, and the testimony of Vicky Hutchison, a new resident who claims she overheard Echols bragging about the murders at a Wiccan meeting. The trials begin in 1994. Misskelley is tried separately because under the Bruton rule, his confession cannot be admitted against his co-defendants. The prosecution calls Dale W. Griffiths, a graduate of an unaccredited university, as an expert in the occult. Griffiths testifies that the murders were a satanic ritual. Richard Offshee, an expert on false confessions from UC Berkeley, testifies for the defense that Misskelley's interrogation was a classic example of police coercion, but the jury is not convinced. On February 5, 1994, Misskelley is convicted of 1 count of first-degree capital murder and 2 counts of second-degree murder. He receives life plus 40 years. 3 weeks later, Echols and Baldwin stand trial together. The prosecution continues its satanic ritual theory. The defense argues that news articles could have been the source for Echols' knowledge about the genital mutilation. Echols testifies that Detective Ridge's description of their earlier conversation is inaccurate, calling some claims lies. On March 19, 1994, the verdicts come down. Guilty on all counts. The court sentences Jason Baldwin to life in prison. Damien Echols receives the death penalty. The years that follow bring new scrutiny. Documentary filmmakers Joe Berlinger and Bruce Sinofsky arrive in West Memphis to film what will become Paradise Lost, the child murders at Robin Hood Hills. The 1996 documentary raises troubling questions about the investigation and trials. Viewers see a crime scene that was literally trampled, according to Misskelley's former attorney Dan Stidham. They learn that the bodies were removed from the water before the coroner arrived, left to decay on the creek bank, exposed to sunlight and insects. They hear about blood samples taken from a Bojangles restaurant bathroom on the night of the murders, samples from a bleeding man who seemed mentally disoriented, samples that Detective Bryn Ridge later admitted he lost. Celebrities and musicians take notice. Metallica allows their music to be used in the documentary, the first time they've ever done so. Johnny Depp, Eddie Vedder, Henry Rollins, and Natalie Maines of the Dixie Chicks become vocal supporters. Fundraisers are held. Awareness spreads. In 2007, new forensic evidence emerges. DNA testing is conducted on material from the crime scene. The results are stunning. None of the genetic material matches Echols, Baldwin, or Misskelley. A report jointly issued by the state and defense states, although most of the genetic material recovered from the scene was attributable to the victims of the offenses, some of it cannot be attributed to either the victims or the defendants. Additional testing reveals more troubling findings. A hair not inconsistent with Stevie Branch's stepfather, Terry Hobbs, is found tied into the knots used to bind one of the victims. Another hair is consistent with Hobbs's friend, David Jacoby. Pamela Hobbs, Stevie's mother, later declares in court documents that she found her son's pocket knife, which he carried constantly, in Terry Hobbs's nightstand after the murders. She also reports that her sister saw Terry washing clothes, bed linens, and curtains from Stevie's room at an odd time around the time of the murders. John Mark Byers, Christopher's adoptive father, and once a vocal proponent of the convictions, publicly reverses his position. He now believes the West Memphis Three are innocent. In 2007, he announces that he will take every opportunity that I have to voice that the West Memphis Three are innocent, and the evidence and proof prove they're innocent. Vicky Hutchison, whose testimony helped secure the convictions, recants entirely. In a 2003 interview with the Arkansas Times, she states that every word she gave to police was a fabrication, that police had implied they would take away her child if she didn't cooperate. She claims an audio tape that police said was unintelligible was actually perfectly clear and contained no incriminating statements. Juror misconduct emerges. In 2008, it is revealed that Kent Arnold, the jury foreman on the Echols-Baldwin trial, discussed the case with an attorney prior to deliberations, sharing knowledge of inadmissible evidence and advocating for guilt. Attorney Dan Stidham testifies that Judge David Burnett made improper communications with the jury during deliberations, telling them they would need food for when you come back for sentencing before verdicts were reached. On November 4, 2010, the Arkansas Supreme Court orders a lower judge to consider whether newly analyzed DNA evidence might exonerate the three. They also instruct the court to examine claims of juror misconduct. The state knows it has a problem. After weeks of negotiations, a deal is struck. On August 19, 2011, Damien Echols, Jason Baldwin, and Jessie Misskelley enter Alford pleas. This unusual arrangement allows them to assert their innocence while acknowledging that prosecutors have enough evidence to convict them. Judge David Laser vacates the previous convictions, including the capital murder convictions, and orders a new trial. The three men then plead guilty to lesser charges while verbally stating their innocence. Judge Laser sentences them to time served, 18 years and 78 days. He adds a suspended sentence of 10 years. If they re-offend, they can be sent back to prison for 21 years. They are released that same day, transferred to the hearing with their possessions already packed. Prosecutor Scott Ellington acknowledges the reality. Although he still considers the men guilty, the three would likely be acquitted if a new trial were held because of the powerful legal counsel now representing them, the loss of evidence over time, and the change of heart among witnesses. As part of the plea deal, the three men cannot pursue civil action against the state for wrongful imprisonment. Since their release, the three men have taken different paths. Jason Baldwin initially resisted the plea deal, refusing on principle to admit guilt for something he didn't do. He only agreed when he realized his refusal would mean Echols stayed on death row. "This was not justice," he said. "However, they're trying to kill Damien." Baldwin moved to Seattle, enrolled in college, and planned to become a lawyer to help other wrongfully convicted persons. Jessie Misskelley became engaged to his high school girlfriend and enrolled in community college to train as an auto mechanic. Damien Echols, who spent 18 years on death row, relocated to Salem, Massachusetts with his wife Lori Davis. He has published books, created art, and become a vocal advocate for the wrongfully convicted. In 2021, he reiterated that he would not give up seeking to have remaining evidence retested. But officials told his legal team that such evidence had been lost or destroyed years ago in a fire. A FOIA request was submitted. In December 2021, Echols' team was able to review remaining evidence and plan to move forward with new testing. In June 2022, a judge rejected the request for DNA testing. In April 2023, the Arkansas Supreme Court ruled in Echols' favor, allowing DNA testing to proceed. In April 2024, the court again reversed a lower court's order denying the motion. The West Memphis Three are free, but they are not exonerated. The Alford plea means their convictions still stand on paper. They remain, in the eyes of the law, convicted murderers who simply served their time. The real killer or killers have never been found. Christopher Byers, Michael Moore, and Steve Branch have never received justice. Their memorial still stands at Weaver Elementary School, where all three were second graders. The playground equipment has been updated over the years, but the memorial plaque remains, bearing three names that should have faded from memory decades ago. Their lives cut short at age 8 by violence that the Arkansas legal system cannot fully explain. Robin Hood Hills still stands. The creek still flows. And somewhere in the files of the West Memphis Police Department, in the memories of those who lived through that terrible spring of 1993, the truth waits. Silent as the water, dark as the woods, waiting for someone brave enough to speak it aloud. If this case stayed with you, please subscribe to Verdict Files. We cover new cases every week, and your support helps us keep telling these stories. Hit the like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and share this video with someone who follows true crime. Every share brings more attention to cases that deserve it. We'll see you in the next case.